When verbal disagreements escalate, it may be time to turn it over to the Lord.
Okay, but I have to yell at you guys.
Linda, listen, Linda, listen.
Okay, what?
Like everything that you at this house, you can't trust everything at Grandma's house.
Top of the morning to you. Love that video. When we read Psalm 140 with the eyes of love and a firm determination to get to know our God better, we see how we can depend on our Lord to help us overcome when we're faced with a determined enemy. This is important insight to have, especially in these days when people don't tolerate differences of opinion very well, to the point they plot and scheme how to put down people who would dare disagree with them. It starts off in just verbal attacks through social media or even in person if the opportunity presents itself. And if that doesn't work, then the threats escalate to threats against their physical health or their families. Case in point, threats to the members of the Supreme Court because they dare disagree with pop culture or the world's views on various topics. Evidently, these tactics are age-old because the psalmist is going through something similar. How does he handle it? Verse 4, "Keep me, O Lord, from the hands of the wicked. Preserve me from violent men who have purposed to thrust aside my steps." In other words, trying to get him to change his opinion and join them. He relies on the Lord to help him avoid the traps set by the enemy. They're like hidden snares. This is not new to the psalmist. Verse 7 shows he knows God to be the strength of his salvation. God has protected him before in the day of battle. When the psalmist finds himself being surrounded by people who mean him harm, he calls on God to use techniques against his enemy that seem to have worked in the past. Verse 10, "Let burning coals fall upon them," his enemy. "Let them be cast into the fire, floods and deep water pits from which they will not arise." Or this idea in verse 9, "May the mischief of their own lips and the very things they desire for me come upon them." This is a surefire strategy for the psalmist as he declares in verse 12, "I know, I rest in confidence, the Lord will maintain the cause of the afflicted. He will secure justice for the poor and needy." Meanwhile, the psalmist chooses in verse 13 to give thanks to God's name, his power, and authority, because like a protective parent, God lets the righteous, he allows the righteous, those in right standing with him as children, to dwell in his presence. A word of encouragement: it's very tempting to engage people or social media to try to present your different view of the same subject. As Americans who are raised to value our First Amendment rights of free speech, it's very tempting to verbally engage others. However, when the engagement begins to escalate, it's probably a good idea to drop it, as very few people change their opinions. After a couple of back and forth comments, it's probably a good idea to back off and turn the whole matter to the Lord. It's a good way to keep our God-given mandate to love thy neighbor as ourselves. Have a great day.